So welcome. I'm Amy O'Leary, the Executive Director at Strategies for Children, and we wanted to give you a little bit of information about strategies as we get going. One thing to remember is that Strategies for Children is an independent nonprofit organization, and we don't receive any state or federal funding for our work. We are funded through private foundations and philanthropic efforts and individual donors, and we are working in partnership with the state to provide these technical assistance for folks through this great opportunity we have with the Stabilization Fund.
All right.
I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Marissa Fear. We are also joined by our other colleague, Titus Sasramedios, and our panelists who you'll hear from in a minute. So I'll turn it over to you, Marissa.
Thank you, Amy. So I wanted to start by going over the grant for the next 15 or 20 minutes. And then, as Amy said, we'll turn it over to the panelists, and you can all hear from some fellow childcare providers on their experience with this application process and with the childcare stabilization grants. So the EEC Childcare Stabilization Grant in Massachusetts is funded through the American Rescue Plan Act, which was a federal piece of legislation that was signed by President Biden on March 11th of 2021. In that legislation, Massachusetts received $314 million in federal relief funds to provide economic relief to childcare programs impacted by COVID across the country. So in Massachusetts, the Department of Early Education and Care developed the Commonwealth Cares for Children C3 formula to distribute these federal funds to providers. And we're going to talk a little bit more about how you're eligible for the stabilization grant and what goes into the Commonwealth Cares for Children C3 formula. Right, so the formula considers each provider's licensed capacity, their workforce, and then the vulnerability of the community that they serve. So all providers across Massachusetts that are eligible for this grant will receive a base amount based on your licensed capacity. So this isn't based on your attendance at any given day or your enrollment. It's based on your licensed capacity and then your workforce, so the number of staff that you have working in your program. And this is all calculated in the application itself. So this is not any math that you need to do sort of on the side and then enter in. The application pulls information from your lead account and pre-populates it. So you can go in, you can adjust if you need to, but the information should already be included in the application. And then some providers will also receive an equity adjustment that's based on the vulnerability of the community that they serve. And the equity adjustment is calculated using either the Social Vulnerability Index, which is a tool that was developed by the CDC, or it's based on your subsidy enrollment. So if you're a program that accepts children who have a subsidy attached to them, you would receive an equity adjustment based on your subsidy enrollment. If you do not accept any subsidy in your program, then you may also receive an equity adjustment based on the Social Vulnerability Index score that is associated with your program's address. The SVI acknowledges that both subsidized and private pay programs serve vulnerable children and communities, and it was EEC's way of including the entire provider base in that adjustment. And then I've also included a link here to the C3 formula presentation that EEC provided on the Strategic Action Plan portal. We'll include these slides in the follow-up email so you can go through them yourself and use the links. And then we are also recording this session, so you should be able to go back and watch the recording and learn some more information there. So this is a grant and not a loan, which means that you will not have to pay it back. However, there may be implications for this grant. So it may implicate your taxes or any health and social service benefits for you if you're a family child care provider or for your employees. These are not competitive grants. So if you are eligible, all child care providers that apply and meet the eligibility criteria will receive funding, and applications will be accepted on a rolling basis. The Child Care Stabilization Grant will be distributed to providers in up to 6 monthly payments to support operating costs. So these grants will run from July of 2021 through December of 2021. And what's great is that even though July of 2021 has already passed, when you go into the application, if you were eligible for that month, you can go back and you can select July of 2021 as the first month that you were eligible. So even though the month has passed, you're still eligible. You can still be eligible for that funding if you go into the application. So you didn't miss out on any previous funding if you were eligible. Just to frame the conversation a little bit, this is an unprecedented influx of federal funds for the early education and care field, and it operates in addition to current funding streams. So it doesn't replace your private pay daily rates or your tuition, and it doesn't replace any of the existing subsidy system. We know that programs have suffered heavy financial losses during the childcare closure and throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. And unfortunately, this won't be enough, or may not be enough, to fully make programs whole again to fill that gap, but it will help target approximately 10% of your operating budget, and that should help. The goal was to help programs who are operating right now continue to stay open and stay in business. And then what's most important is that your feedback will be essential moving forward, that there are many state and federal plans that are advocating for additional public funding for the early education and care system. And this is only just the first step in that. So continue to stay engaged and continue to work with EEC, with Strategies for Children, and other advocacy organizations who want to continue to grow this pot of money that is available to the field. And this is sort of an opportunity to build back a stronger early education and care system in Massachusetts. So we also know that the current financing model for childcare is broken. The subsidy reimbursement rate doesn't cover the true cost of care. Parent fees and tuition payments in Massachusetts are unaffordable and some of the highest in the country, and too few children have access to high quality early childhood settings. So too many early childhood educators live on poverty level wages, and too many early childhood programs are one rent payment away from closing or losing their family childcare homes. This is a complex system with many funding streams, public and private dollars, and we can't continue to pay programs on a per child, per day basis. That programs need stable, flexible funds. And this formula that the Department of Early Education and Care developed, the C3 formula, is an opportunity for the field to evaluate the impact of a licensed capacity-based financing model. So with the EEC Childcare Stabilization Grant, the funding is based on your licensed capacity and not on your attendance or your enrollment. So it's an opportunity for all of us to evaluate how effective that is for the field. It's also a new way of distributing public funding to all programs in Massachusetts, not just the existing subsidy system. All right, so some questions on eligibility. So all providers in Massachusetts that were licensed or approved by EEC as of March 11th, 2021, and that are open at the time of application are eligible. So this is your original license. It's not your relicensure. So if you were originally licensed prior to March 11th of 2021, and then if you're open at the time of application. So if your program was open on or before July of 2021, you would be eligible for that first month of July of 2021. If your program only runs during the school year and you didn't open until September of 2021, the first month that you would apply for would be September of 2021, and then you would be eligible for the remaining months of the grant through December. So programs will not be penalized for a temporary COVID-related emergency closure that occurs during the grant period. We know that programs that remain closed for the duration of the grant will not be eligible and will need additional support to reopen. So we also know that new EEC programs will need support as well. So these are two sort of examples of programs that will not be eligible for this bucket of funding, but that we are continuing to support and to think about how we can support them in the field as well. So before you start the application, I'd encourage everyone to take a look at some of these resources that were developed by EEC. The first is the help desk, which we've included their email address as well as a phone number here. And this is also built into the application platform. So if you have any questions when you're working on the application, you can click on the help desk and speak to someone there. The department has also developed a child care stabilization grant website where they host all of these resources, lots of information about the grant, contact information for the help desk, as well as user guides. There's a video library on YouTube where it shows you examples of someone going through the application, and you can watch the video and see if you have any questions. You get a little preview of the questions themselves, as well as for PDFs of the application. So I've included both the links for the group and school age and the family child care stabilization grant application. They've also included a link to the C3 formula calculator. So what you can do here is you can estimate your grant amount. So your final award will be determined based on your official application and the information that you put in there. But you can go onto this calculator and get an estimate of what you should be awarded on a monthly basis. So to complete the application, this is the information that you will need to have. First, you'll need your program ID, and you'll need the login information for your LEAD account. You'll need the race and ethnicity and the gender of the center director or FCC operator, confirmation of EEC's consumer webpage rate and hour information. So you'll need to update or confirm the rate and hours that your program is open and what you charge. Enrollment information as of the first of the current month that you are applying for. So if you're applying for July of 2021, you'll need your enrollment information as of the 1st of July of 2021. Staff information, including salary, benefits, and additional stipends that you may have provided staff. Any scholarship information that you provide families. There's a question on there about your monthly expenses, which is optional. It's EEC's way of trying to see if this amount of funding actually does target 10% of your operating costs. And it's sort of the only way that EEC has of being able to get into sort of programs' individual finances and seeing if this is effective in accomplishing what they're hoping that it is, because they are not requiring a budget for this application, as well as attestations. So an attestation to maintain salaries and provide tuition relief to the extent possible for families in your program. And the language is really clear there, to the extent possible, giving programs some flexibility, that it's not a mandated requirement. It's just an attestation to do that to the extent possible, as well as some banking and tax information so that programs can receive either mailed checks or direct deposits into their account. So in this PowerPoint, we've also included the link to apply. So this application is built into your LEAD platform. When you log into LEAD, you'll go to the grants management page. The application opened in August, and the first month that was available is July, and will run from July through December of 2021. So you can apply for the first month that you meet the eligibility criteria and begin the application there. Each consecutive month following that, you will recertify. So you'll go in and you'll say that your information is correct, and we'll hear a little bit more about that from the providers on our panel later today. And then your monthly funding amounts will be calculated based on the information that you submit in the application. And you'll have the opportunity to confirm or update this each month. So because the monthly amount is based on staffing information, for example, if you were to hire new staff in a subsequent month, you'd be able to go into the application and to update that so that you'd receive additional funding for the next month. This application is also available in English, Spanish, Portuguese, and Mandarin. And there are resources on EEC's grant website, support resources, that are also available in these 4 languages. The application includes 10 sections, which we've listed here, and then we've also included the optional question about your monthly expenses. This information will help inform EEC's future reporting and future grant opportunities. So just to give everyone a little bit of a preview, it's a relatively short application. And these are the sections that are included. And then finally, EEC will require a midpoint and a post-grant report to collect information on how the grant was used and submit required state and federal reporting. So programs should maintain records and other documentation to support the use of funds in compliance with the attestations. We've included here the list of allowable expenses with the grant funds. So these funds can be used on personnel costs, benefits, premium pay, and recruitment and retention, rent or mortgage payments, utilities, facilities maintenance or improvements, or insurance, PPE, cleaning and sanitation supplies and services, or training and professional development related to health and safety practices, purchase of or updates to equipment and supplies to respond to COVID-19, goods and services necessary to maintain or resume childcare services, mental health supports for children and employees, as well as for paying for any past expenses incurred after January 31st of 2020, knowing that many programs had to put themselves into debt to account for the childcare closure. So any past expenses that were incurred after January 31st of 2020. Strategies for Children has also developed a childcare stabilization grant information page on our website, which I've included the link for here. We've developed 2 different guides to the grant, one for group and school age programs and one for family childcare programs. There's a Google form where we are collecting feedback and questions from programs, sharing this information with EEC, as well as answering as many questions as we can, as well as all the links to EEC's support materials and application resources. And the registration information for sessions like this and any future panels or sessions that we may host. I'd encourage all of you to stay in touch with us, to sign up for our email updates and advocacy alerts, as well as following us on social media. We'll share resources. We'd love to stay in touch with you and continue to include you in this process. And I am now going to turn it over to Amy, who will introduce our 3 panelists for today. And you can hear a little bit about their experience with the application process and with the stabilization grant.
Great, Marissa. So if we can transition to stop sharing so we can see our panelists. And Shira, who I apologize, we had no idea you were joining us today, and we have other interpretation happening later. So we're thrilled to have you with us, and apologies for any delay in getting you on. So thank you, Marissa. We know we covered a ton of information in that opening, and we will have the slides available for folks to refer back to. We also know that the Department of Early Education and Care has lots of resources to help move this process forward. But we are thrilled to have 3 panelists with us this afternoon. We have Jessie Vogel, Luisa Palladino, and Kelly Pellegrini. And to start, I'll have you each share a little bit about you and your program, so we get a sense for where your program's located, how many children and families are you serving, and then anything else that you want to share with us as we get started.
So I'm Jessie Vogel. I'm the director of North Shore Nursery School in Beverly Farms, Massachusetts. So we're located on the North Shore. We serve 52 children who are from ages 2 to 5. And we are a school year group school age program.
Great. How about Luisa?
Hi, my name is Luisa Palladino. I'm the center director at the YWCA of Central Mass, the Westboro branch. We have a smaller center than our Worcester facility, where we have licensed capacity for 69 children. We range in ages of 2 months of age up until 5. We are NAIC accredited, QRIS level 3, and just working to keep our heads above water.
Thanks so much, Luisa. And Kelly.
Well said. So we are also working to keep our heads above water. We are Charlestown Nursery School. We're in Charlestown. Our capacity is 54. We serve about 100 children. We are part-time, so we fit a sort of a different bucket. And we are a not-for-profit. And of course, given the pandemic and the challenges of sort of staying open, definitely have benefited from the grant.
And all of you spoke about kind of the times that we're living in now and the demands put on administrators and on educators and family child care providers. So first, congratulations for taking this step and applying for this funding. And we'll get into kind of your experience. But can you talk about your experience in receiving state funding before? So have you in your program received state funding, and talk a little bit about what that looks like?
I can go first if that's okay. So prior to the stabilization grant, we did apply for the workforce grant. I think it was back in June or May through EEC. And with that, our human resource director, as well as our finance department, came up with a scale. And they did give the staff a one-time bonus. And what they used for that scale was basically how long you have been with the company, whether you were full-time, part-time, and your position as well. So they used all of that on a scale and gave each educator a bonus, if you will. And I guess it varied for everybody. But that was something that was extremely helpful for the staff who've been working straight through COVID, whether at home or anything else. So it was really nice to feel appreciated and just I mean, I think that was a great thing that EEC did, and the way that our organization distributed those funds was even better.
And at the YW, do you also accept subsidies from the state?
We do, yes, we do. I don't have many out here, but we do, yes.
So, okay, great. So thank you for that. Kelly, what about you? Have you received state funding before?
So we're eligible for vouchers, but do not have many. And we have not typically gotten state funding. So we sort of represent that 80% that is usually not at the table when it comes to state funding. And there had been no mechanism before for us to sort of be included in this. And so this grant was so accessible and so helpful in that, because clearly the challenges around salary, the challenges around meeting the budget. And when you look at that list of things that this could be applied for, sort of all of those buckets are things that we could certainly use the resources for. And our sort of sentiment has been the economics is the same, whether you're public, private, it costs about the same per child. It's just who's paying for it. And children are the same, just are the same in K to 12, 0 to 5 children, wherever they land, need support and their families need support. So we were grateful for this opportunity.
And Jessie, do you want to share a little bit about you?
Sure. So we're in a similar bucket as Charlestown Nursery School, where we're a nonprofit. Our tuition drives our revenue for our school. And so we were not eligible for state funding prior to this. We do not accept subsidies or vouchers. And so we do have some financial assistance that we offer to families. But this was our first go around with state funding, and we were very excited. I actually heard I have a local group of directors and we collaborate often. And I had coffee with one of them before school started, and she said, "Have you applied for this grant?" And I said, "What grant?" And, it was this one. And so she encouraged me to apply. She said it was fairly seamless. I found the same, it was fairly seamless for me as well. And now I've since reached out to other directors that I know, encouraging them to apply. It's a really great opportunity for EEC.
And thanks to each of you for your perspective, because that is what is different about this funding. I think we are conditioned in our work to think about eligibility and what it looks like and some of the strings that have often come along with public funding. But that's why we would have this session today, because, as long as you are open and licensed by March 11th, Marissa, tell me if I'm wrong, you are eligible. And so you didn't have to have a funding relationship with the state before. And we also know the state is really looking at how to best serve your program type. So if you had a summer program compared to a full, a September different, the numbers can change. You can update staffing and children enrolled, but that it really is about this program to think about how this might look in the future. One of the questions I answered in chat was, will there be funding available past 6 months? And as Marissa laid it out, what we understand and which we know is there's funding available for 6 months, that we know is guaranteed. We are going to need to advocate, to learn lessons, to maybe if there's some tweaks that need to be, changed, to think about further funding. We do know that there will be additional dollars flowing to Massachusetts. So part of what we hope to do is make the case that really supporting all programs is a good bet for Massachusetts. And so, now as we think about money flowing to programs, how are we using that? Where are we seeing the benefits of these dollars? So you've talked a little bit about, and we know another policy change is the impact of receiving funding based on your license capacity instead of attendance or enrollment. So as we talk about, I'd love to hear you, talk about how that has impacted things. And along with that, can you talk about the application process itself, like getting kind of down to the nitty gritty? We've heard some hints that it was easier than other times where you've applied. So if we can start with Louisa and then just tell us about your experience.
Absolutely. I think this by far was one of the easiest applications through EEC. It was very just kind of walked you through it, if you will. The help desk was also extremely helpful if you did have any questions. They had a very quick turnaround time. But as long as you have all your data in front of you, you should be able to input it without any problems or hesitation. I do definitely want to thank EEC for making it so easy, and for giving us that time frame as well to do it. A lot of times when there are grants or opportunities available, whether it's nonprofit or for profit, they usually give you a very tight timeline. So I felt that this just makes it easier for other facilities to also go ahead and at any point in time in the 6 months and apply.
Go ahead, Kelly, if you could talk about that, and then also the impact of the funding, based on your capacity.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the same thing. I'm not going to lie that I'm a little bit afraid of LEAD. So, to get in there at all, I always think, gosh, do I have the right paperwork? And these are systems that have changed frequently. But it was consistent, and it was easy for someone who it is not typically easy for. So I would say that all of the questions they were asking, I knew the answers to. It's stuff that we do every day. It was very straightforward. It also felt important from an advocacy perspective to be counted. I think, one of the things that we're not so great about doing in our field is talking about how hard this is, and talking about that shortages are happening across different sectors and across different communities, and that we've all really struggled. And I think our voices are becoming louder, but I think that we're always sort of like, is this for me? Do I need this the most? Can I get by? And the truth of the matter is that everybody is really struggling and needs some support right now. And it's so connected, as Amy said, to that capacity. So I felt really confident that I wasn't taking any more than I needed or any more than I was serving. It was really reflective of our capacity and what we're able to deliver the community and the service that we're able to provide. So not dissimilar from pure people funding and all of those things that happen in K-12, it felt like this was consistent and very much aligned with sort of what the resources are for.
And Jesse, can you talk about if there were additional resources that you accessed kind of going through the application? And then can you talk about the recertification process month to month?
Sure. So my best resource was actually the PowerPoint from Strategies for Children, to be honest. And I'm not just saying that because you guys are here. But that was the absolute best resource. It walked me through everything. And I was able to fall back on that. The pieces of information that I definitely needed were the bank account number and the tax ID number. So just make sure you have those in front of you as you're going through the process, because I did have to reach out to my business manager about that information. But I would say it was a pretty seamless process. Again, it was nice to feel considered and to feel advocated for as an early childhood director. And I think that's something that we fought for a lot, for our voices to be heard through last year, was that there was a lot of funding that was available to the Department of the Elementary and Secondary Ed that we were not eligible for as early childhood providers. As far as recertification, I feel like EEC has been very timely in sending an email to say you're up for recertification. I certainly checked the portal before just to make sure I wasn't missing anything, but you can log into the portal at any time. It will show you your grant status. It will show you when you're eligible to recertify. And there's someone at the help desk that's available to help you. I know I've called twice, and if someone wasn't available right away, they've called me back. And so it's felt like I've been able to reach someone or have questions answered when I have them. So it's a fairly easy process to recertify as well.
And Louisa and Kelly, would you add anything to the recertification process?
It's just a matter of going in and really just updating your staff numbers as well as your enrollment numbers. But like they had mentioned, the best part of this is that it goes by your capacity. Many of us have had to close down rooms or darken rooms. So it's great that that funding is still coming in so that eventually we can reopen these classrooms.
Yes, super straightforward. And lots of reminders and all those things. It is also important to remember that once you go in, if you don't have the information, you can go back in and the information is saved for you. So everything is very user friendly. And as they said, we got several calls from the help desk and sort of verifying some of our information, and they were just supportive and responsive, and clearly also want to see children getting what they deserve.
Absolutely.
I think I'll pick right up on that thread. And I think, you know, the Commissioner, Sam, has been transparent about what they have learned, hearing you know, the influence from the field, people who spoke up about some of the other grant opportunities. And I think to really see how they took to heart, especially around the time management, you know, that to make this as easy as possible while also continuing the accountability. Right. So as these funds come, we need to make sure that there's a way that we're showing the impact of these funds. What we'll do is, so folks, Marissa had put in the chat, we have two functions, but if you use the Q&A function, that way we can track the questions. So I'm going to take a minute as we continue on. We did this question about school age. So our school age program was not included in our grant, even though we provided all the information in the application. So as we said before, we are not the state. That sounds like that would be a good question for the help desk or for EEC. We'd be happy to help connect you. And I think I saw your email come through right as we were starting. And then someone has added that there have been some big questions for school age programs. Provide, you know, whether you had summer months and then you had less or more kids for the school year. And as in the name of making things easier, a lot of information was pre-populated, but then there were any changes, you just need to, you know, be making that. So if you can see this, thank you for that helpful piece of information that someone shared. On the application, should the information be changed monthly or remain the same? And does the funding amount change based on the information given? So if somebody want to walk through, like your initial application may have said X, and then as you've recertified, have people changed information? So I'd open that to any of the panelists.
Really, all we really have done is go in monthly and just update the enrollment and the staffing information. Everything else seems to pretty much be the same. So that's basically all we do. It takes me about 5 minutes just to go in, update, and hit submit. So it's fairly easy.
So when you applied, you had X amount of numbers, right?
Correct. Yep.
And then the next month, it's almost like confirming this is all still true with a chance to change some of those numbers for staff and for children.
Exactly. So in September, we had less children than October 1st. So when we applied for September, we had to go back in October 1st and just adjust our enrollment a little bit. And if there was any staff changes as well, you would just update that and hit submit. So it's very, very easy.
What about Kelly or Jesse?
Yeah, I mean, same. It's super easy to adjust. We have not had to make any adjustments yet, but we know because we were in there today, checking in on things, and the number would then shift or move if there had been additional staffing and the budget had changed. I can say that again, that Amy sort of spoke to is that, you know, I think sometimes when you're short staffed and you can see that, like, I'm in a closet and don't have an office and I'm like a lot of directors, it doesn't feel like you have a grant writer, and it doesn't feel like you have a development team. It doesn't feel like you're administratively strong enough to do extra paperwork. Jessie, I think, was coming on. She said, I was just covering a class. I mean, that is very much our reality. And that clearly was taken into account. And so it was so straightforward. It did not feel like another lift in an already very difficult time.
And we haven't had to change a thing. Our numbers have been the same. So it just basically says, do you attest to the best of your ability that all this information is accurate and correct, and you click the button and you're good to go.
Great. And then one of the questions is, has any one of you done an appeal for the funding amount? And curious if they did. And can you share the grant amount size, other agency? And that's from Kelly Marion. And Kelly, we can also send you some information about that. But has anyone gone through the appeal process on the panel?
I did help the Worcester site had gone through the appeal process. There was just a discrepancy on the actual capacity size on their license. So they had to go through the help desk. And from my understanding, the appeal process was probably the most difficult process out of the whole thing. The help desk was very good at getting back to them and confirming information. It was more of just trying to get in touch with them to just fix that small problem. So it did take some reminding and some emails, but it did happen. So.
And it also sounds like kind of having as much information about kind of what your challenges or what the numbers are, you know, having that, as you call the help desk, because they're coming from their perspective. And we have heard, and we've brought this up with the department, as well as, you know, just making sure that the responsiveness, and we know they want to be responsive and you know, have the most possible funding get out to programs. So thank you for that. There is a question, Marissa, if a program has not yet applied, is there still an option to apply?
There is. So if you log into your LEAD account, the application portal is still open. If you were eligible for the first month, which is July of 2021, you can go in and apply for that first month. If you were eligible for a later month, you would start there, say September of 2021. But yes, you can go and you can apply retroactively for any of the previous months.
And then there's a question, we are open in July, but close in August and then reopen in September. How does that work for updates for the system? So it sounds like once you get your application in, you can also adjust month by month. Marissa, is that right? Or Jesse, it's you nodding.
Yes, and then so the way that would work is, for example, using Luisa's example, when you go and you update your staff information, that is something that factors into the C3 formula into your grant amount. So if you were to say hire additional staff for a subsequent month, your grant amount would reflect that and you would have an increase in your grant amount.
And I think that's one of the things that we heard about is we are so used to having a cutoff date for a grant and like you missed the boat. So we also have to get our head around there's opportunities to go back. I think it's important just to hear that you have to be eligible. So you have to meet the original eligibility requirements. But as long as you do, there's a lot of room for fixing and adjusting and you know, getting the funding that you are eligible for. Although everyone's eligible. I guess the one thing I would say, we also heard in the beginning that people were, you know, I think with Amazon and like getting things delivered the next day, you know, the department had to get thousands of bank accounts and confirm that information and make sure, you want to make sure the funding is coming to the right place. And as Jesse said, you might have somebody else who's managing some of that work for you. So just kind of as much support as you can garner at your program. And then thinking about being extra patient as the department really is working for the first time ever to get this funding out to folks. So let's, oh, go ahead.
No, I would just say that ours came quickly. We applied in early September. It came in the end of September. I think the other sort of mind shift is that, you know, it's real money. I think we are so used to box tops for education and being grateful for every $25. When we had to freeze salaries and had to make a lot of adjustments during the pandemic, which was really hard for an already compromised industry and with the labor shortage. And at one point, we thought we were going to be able to give faculty like a $500 bonus. And over the course of the year, that ends up being like, what, I don't know, $5 a week or something. And it sometimes feels like you're doing a lot of work for very little return. This did acknowledge the goal of 10%. And so we definitely saw that. And I've heard from our colleagues that it is really making an impact. This is not about like a Band-Aid here, a Band-Aid there. This is really impactful on our operating budget and doing what the grant was intended to do, which is to stabilize the field and hopefully really reward those educators who have been on the front lines and have not seen that kind of acknowledgement.
So thank you for that. And as we talk about real money, can you talk about, so just some context setting, you know, as we hear about these, some people are thinking them as one-time funds. The federal government, these are relief funds. These aren't quite baked in to our consistent funding that we have at the state or federal level, although we are working on both tracks to make sure that we can guarantee this. And I think we've heard from many people who want to support staff and build up salaries, and that's their number one priority, but it can be hard to operationalize as you think about just the way the funding is flowing. So can you talk a little bit about how you are spending the funds? And then at the end, we'll talk about like, what do we wish for the future? You know, what have you learned that will help inform future advocacy and action? So what are you planning on using the funding for?
So
go ahead, Jesse. No, go ahead.
So we actually, we have a teacher that's part-time that comes a couple days a week, and we actually added in some more hours for that, that person who's coming. So it provides extra coverage for our classrooms. It wasn't something that we anticipated we would be able to do, but it has been a great relief to be able to add a few more hours to someone's schedule a few more times a week. And, you know, a huge help to the classrooms and support of the classrooms. We also have some facilities projects that are related to COVID that we are trying to work on enhancing and implementing and getting installed over the next few months. So that's kind of our plan. It worked out that one of the quotes that we got was kind of the amount that we were granted our first month. So of course, our board was ready to pass that one right through. So, but, you know, we're working on things that are related to our program, also enhancing our product of providing the best quality education that we can for young children. So.
Thanks, Jessie. Louisa?
So what we've been doing here is for these bonuses, well, it started off with bonuses for staff. So what they did is they, again, used a scale, and these were much smaller bonuses, but they were allocated kind of in the same way with longevity and full-time versus part-time. So they were given that. They were also given, for anyone who's been working for the Y for over 2 years, they've also gave them a separate kind of bonus, which was about 15% of their salary. And that was basically just to kind of retain, show appreciation for their hard work throughout everything. The Y is also planning on providing more funding for staff in December, and fingers crossed again, possibly in 2022. We were also able to get more technology. We were doing a lot of, still to this day, doing a lot of Zoom meetings with parents, and we're doing our, you know, get to know your school night via Zoom. So that takes a lot on technology and internet. So we upgraded our systems here as well, and was able to get tablets that are functioning, and you know, an internet that works, which is fantastic. We've also started to look towards our compression with minimum wage going up. How can this funding help with the compression as that? Usually January 1st is when our educators would receive that extra funding for the minimum wage compression. However, this year they were able to boost it up to October 1st, which is amazing. They're also doing sign-on bonuses since you know, it's very dry out there, unfortunately, for staff. So we want to give some kind of an incentive for people who are signing on, as well as a referral bonus. So anything we can kind of do to retain the amazing staff and educators that we do currently have, as well as try to get some more on board. So yeah.
Great. Anything to add, Kelly?
Yeah, I mean, we're just 100% giving it to faculty. And I know it's tempting to look at those other pieces in the budget, but we're interested in both stabilizing, but not sinking. I mean, it's an industry that needs more than stabilization. It needs a real boost. And that's what we're trying to sort of propel us out of the pandemic better, and that will allow us to do that. And there's been a lot of conversation about, like, but if it's not going to be there forever, how can I give it to staff, because they'll expect that. No one at Fidelity ever doesn't get a bonus because they're worried about what the profits are going to be the next year. We need to change our mindset that a bonus is a bonus, and when it's there, we give it to people. And we don't hold it back because we're worried it won't be there again. So when we figure out what this 4 months is going to allow us through the stabilization grant, we feel comfortable giving bonuses. And if we never see the money again, which we hope is not the case, it's still the right thing to do. And it's what other industries do without blinking. We're only as good as our teachers. Nothing else is going to save us, but our educators are really the ones who will determine whether we can achieve high quality or whether we're just getting by. And so I just see it as such a remarkable opportunity to finally put resources where they're going to make an impact. For us, you know, facilities, we're not even in buildings anymore, we're all outside, are less important. It's just all about the teachers. So we feel grateful for that. But it's not going to be without some advocacy. Clearly, you have boards, as Jessie and sort of talked about, and there are going to be lots of people who think you can put it other places, but we know from the research, the most impactful for us will be teachers.
Thanks to all of you and for making some of those hard decisions, right? This is relief. We are filling holes that have been decades in the making. We have balanced budgets on the backs of educators and family childcare providers. So thinking about how to support them creatively is and we shouldn't blink when we think about honoring staff. Can you talk a little bit about the accountability? I think some of the questions we've heard about is like, I'm just worried. What if somebody comes back and says, how'd you spend the money? How are you both internally kind of like the operationalizing of tracking the money? And then how are you also helping to tell the story of why we need flexible dollars to continue to support quality?
Okay, I didn't know if I should jump in. I'm sorry, can you repeat that, Amy?
How are you tracking it? And then how
Got
are
it.
you telling the story?
Okay, so tracking our business department as well as our human resources department have all kinds of fantastic scales and PowerPoints and all kinds of great things that they're using. They're also keeping paper trails of everything in case that were to ever happen. That's kind of how we're tracking it. And then, I'm sorry, what was the second part?
How are you telling the story? So how are you telling the story about kind of like, where is this funding coming from? How are you, and then to parents or the community?
So we prior to COVID did a lot of parent involvement activities. So obviously that has now changed. So what we do is we send home a lot of notices. We love to let the parents understand and kind of know that, there is some relief in the future. There is some funding coming to the educators. One of the biggest thing that I've heard from our parents and our community here, when we were all locked down last March up until whenever the centers reopened, our educators were going above and beyond. They were going to houses, they were doing drive-bys, they were dropping off packets of stuff for them to do. They were doing Zoom classes twice a week. And this is toddlers and preschoolers. So this to me felt as though these educators really need to be recognized, and the parents felt the same way. We had parents during the pandemic that were not sending their children, but strictly paying tuition so that the teachers could get paid. That to me was amazing. So our parents are the biggest advocates for us. And I think that they're really pleased with the way that the Department of Early Education has finally come around and able to assist us, even if it's just short term, but at least making them aware that this is a problem. And this is something that needs more longevity.
Great. Jesse or Kelly?
Yeah, I mean, the same thing, tracked by our auditors and our business departments and all of those things. And I should say that, just about the teacher's salary, I mean, I think that is a form of parent relief. It is a form of business relief also, because we're not raising tuition to cover those bonuses. As Lisa sort of says, every parent wants to give greater bonuses. Every employer wants to make sure childcare is open. So this is really about community relief. By relieving the educators, we're relieving the organization, we're relieving the parents, we're relieving all of those things. And so the ripple effect, I think, is really powerful, and communicating that in the context of K-12 and other demands on society, I think is really powerful. But everybody knows how it impacts them personally. And I think just continuing to tell the story of how it just keeps sort of our village, our city, our state, and our country running feels very, very important. And I think it is still always important for people to know how little these teachers were ultimately making. I think to put that in context, to say, $500 extra, what that really breaks down to per day, per hour, per year is revealing.
Anything to add, Jesse?
Sure. I think for us, it's just opened up a greater discussion. We're working on our strategic plan right now for the next 3 to 5 years. So having the opportunity to really, put to the forefront what these teachers make and the reality of, how much work they do in comparison to what they make is causing us to ask ourselves a lot of critical questions and causing us to really focus on setting the tone for the future. And I feel like as a director, having the opportunity to have those critical conversations is really essential. And so I would agree with what Kelly and Louisa said, that, you know, if you can't take care of your teachers, then, you know, you're really not advocating as best you can for the field. And so, and when your teachers are happy, then their students are happy, then parents are happy. And so, you know, it's not about me at all. It's about the rest of the people in my community. And so, you know, we want to make sure that we have their best intentions at heart. And one of those ways that we can do that is to support them financially.
So as we know and live by, the experts who are doing this work every day are the people who should be on panels, influencing policymakers and really telling the stories. And so we can't thank you enough for taking time in the middle, whether you're sitting in the closet or about to, you know, late to join because you're covering a classroom. You know, I've only lost it a few times publicly on Zoom, but it has always been about talking about the work that people are doing every day, that we are used to going unnoticed, but can go unnoticed no more. And the work that teachers are doing and educators, kind of layered on all the pieces you talked about the fear and the anxiety and the worry and the continuing of doing our best to support children and families. And we know that those efforts have been redoubled in September as children who came in who had never been out of, you know, with their parents, who were transitioning to different learning experiences, and just the heroic work that is happening in all over the state. We do thank you for that. And thank you for everybody who submitted questions. We answered most of them either live or in writing. We will continue, we document the questions. It's so helpful to know what people ask. The resources are still available. So EEC and Strategies for Children both have resources available, which we'll include in the follow-up email. Before I turn for the last reflection of the panelists, I just want to emphasize what Jesse said about just knowing about this opportunity is critical. And sometimes people hear and they're like, well, it's coming from the state, so that's not me. This is for people, for everybody, and it's a different way of thinking. And it can be intimidating, you can be a little worried, but hopefully in hearing the voices of your colleagues and peers who have done it and lived to tell the tale of applying for funding. I also want to say that one of the easiest things to do is say thank you, to say thank you to the commissioner, to say thank you to the staff at EEC, thank you to the elected officials who are really working so hard to make sure that this is all helping to support programs. And we'd be happy to help connect you to that. It can be sometimes, you know, it can be a hard job to have to make these decisions at the state and federal level. And anytime they can hear that the decisions that are getting made are having real impact, because as Kelly said, that's what we all want for children and families. So as we close, any advice or kind of one word of wisdom that you would share with folks who are either hesitant, worried about talking about with their board, or just are unsure of the process? Just share some of your expertise. What's one thing you would share with folks as we close up today?
Definitely go in and apply. This is funding that doesn't matter if you're profit, for-profit, nonprofit, if you take subsidies, non-subsidies. We are nonprofit. We do accept vouchers. However, we don't have a lot due to our community. So we very rarely get funding. So this was a great opportunity for us. And I know for others in the same situation, this is a great opportunity to help not only your educators, your children, your families, your community, and just overall just sense of relief. So I would definitely suggest that everyone can get onto their LEAD portal and apply for it. There's funding out there, and take advantage of it.
Great. Jesse and Kelly, last words.
I would say just do it and pass on, spread the word, because it's, you know, this is not like it's not like the other things that came our way last year. It's money that you do not have to pay back. It's a grant. So, you know, do it, document it. And if you need help, just reach out and ask for help, because there's plenty of other people that were in your same shoes that hadn't applied or didn't know about it. And so it's helpful to know that, you know, everyone has started somewhere. So just do it.
Great. And Kelly, last word.
That's it. I say, you know, thank you to these directors who've motivated me to do it. Thank you to Strategies for Children. I did thank my elected official at the grocery store the other day for this grant. I think, it's such a model for showing up, and I just, strategies and the department and all the people behind all of this, it's working. So pull up your chair to the table, and that's what this grant is really about, because I think we're onto something here. So the more we can get out there and the more we can apply, I think the better off we'll all be. So thank you.
Just want to reiterate all of that and add, there's one last question in the Q&A. You do not have to pay this back. And I think the other piece is it is being paid out monthly to make these adjustments, right? That's also very different than getting one lump sum. It is really meant to be responsive, which is incredible because we know that day-to-day things are changing. To be able to count on it at least for 6 months is incredible opportunity. We also need to show that this can work. It's a huge opportunity to say, this is what we've been talking about. So many of the inequities were highlighted and made real over the past 2 years, with babies joining with Zoom calls and parents really struggling to figure out how to make it all work. And we know what expertise there is out there in the field. So thank you for joining us today. As we said, strategiesforchildren.org is our organization. Right at the top, you'll see a banner that you can click to for more information. Thank you to our fantastic panelists for sharing your expertise, most importantly, your time in the middle of the workday. We will be doing another session tonight that will be translated in English and Spanish. And so we will, there's still room available to sign up for that. So if you know somebody who might have questions, please direct them to that, and we will be in touch. But thank you for the work that you're doing every day to support children and families. Have a good night.
Thank you.